when I say hell gigs, do you have any that like I feel like comics have those shows that are always behind their back, just waiting to like say like, don't forget this is how bad it can get. Like those shows that you never really get over. Do you have any shows like that you're still carrying?
I had one that I always talk about, and it's not like it. It's a terrible situation, but I'm not sure if it's a you had to be there situation or not. But like, I did like when I was probably about 3 years into comedy, I was asked to do a post party for a film festival in Manhattan. Okay, and it was me and a few other comics in the show. I was like third or fourth in the lineup of like 5 comics or something like that, whatever it was. But this woman, it was brutal. The woman who set it up, her name was Shorty Brown or something like that. I'll just say her name. Like, it was a terrible. She shouldn't have done it. Like, even if she listens to this podcast, you should not have had this show. She was a pleasant person. She was a great person, but I just, and she goes, but she did do the thing of this. So we all get there. All the comics get there. It's at a bar. It's after a film festival. So you can imagine people are buzzing. They just saw a bunch of movies,
right?
Like whatever it was, right? So I'm talking. There's probably 150 people in this bar, and for 3 years in, like that's a lot of people from Manhattan to do a show, So we get there and we go, okay, where's the show? She shows us to where the show is. It's on these like 2 speakers, like she has us standing on speakers, like literally like one speaker next to another, and that's the whole stage. So you were on like a plank. You're like walking the plank, and you're like on a plank. It was brutal. So we're like, okay, cool. So then everybody is talking full blast in this bar, like you're at a bar on a Saturday night. Like the volume, everybody's talking, right? So we're watching it. We're watching everybody talking, and we're kind of like, hey, so what's going on? And she goes, oh, don't worry, guys. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to host and introduce you, so don't worry about it. So we go, okay, no problem. So so time comes to start the show. She stands up on one of the speakers, and she goes, hey, guys, we're going to start the show now. Hey, guys, we're going to start the show now. Nobody even flinches. Nobody turns around. Nobody's eyeball goes towards this woman. She goes, okay, so the show started. My name's Shorty. We're doing this show. It's a post-film festival. She doesn't say one joke. She goes, I'm going to bring up your first comic. And she brings up a friend of mine who is a very soft-spoken comic. And then he goes up and he's just talking into a sea of people. Not only talking into a sea of people, everybody's backs were the other way. Everybody was facing the other way in this room. Yeah. So they were facing the same way as the comics. So they weren't looking at the stage. Not one person. I'm talking 150 people talking like I'm talking now. Right. Not one person is looking at the stage. My friend bombs his dick off. I don't know if I can say that on your podcast, but sure, he bombs his dick off. Which he should. If he didn't, I would have worried about him as a comic. Then next comic, next one goes up. Bombs. It gets to the point where I am furious. I'm absolutely furious that this is 3 years in, and I'm like, this should not be happening. I'm losing my mind in the back. So I go up and I just have a fucking meltdown on these people, and I'm like, they're barely, and by this point in the show, these 2 douchebags came over and they were like kind of watching the show, but like ironically, like they were like kind of saying stuff under their breath and like laughing to themselves. Like it was the most horrible situation. So I lose my shit. I'm just like, fuck you, fuck your film festival. And I'm saying then I just start listing movies that I think are better than probably all the movies in the film festival, just to be a dick. Like it was like a full on, like made you so much more callous after you do kind of show, where it was like, I despised each person in that bar so wholeheartedly just for even being there. So that was one of the earliest hell gigs that I remember, where it was just the idea of not paying attention. Also, whenever you have people don't know what a stage is, right? That's when it's a problem. You know what I mean? And then another one I have is from the road. So, okay, to give you a background on this one, so you do the road a lot, right, Colin? I'm guessing. Yeah. So, you know how it can be. But so coming up in New York. Okay, so before we started the podcast, I mentioned that I came up here comic-wise. I started here. So here's the thing, man. I had a day job. I didn't come in through the club system. Like I just started open mics and bar shows in the city.
Yeah.
So I had a day job because like you can't live here without a day job. So I had a 9 to 5. So my Fridays were like taken. So I wasn't going to feature at regular clubs. So what I was doing is like these weekend, like tri-state area, like one-nighter type gigs.
Yeah.
And I think it's still around. There used to be a website called Gig Masters. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Yes, it's still there.
It's still there. Okay, so what happened was before – it's so funny, the evolution of this website, because so basically if people don't know what that is, it's where people would bid – like you would bid on a gig. So they would post their gig, and then you would try to give them a price they would agree to. But if somebody came in at a lower price, they might go with them. So it was like an auction for the artist to lowball them so they got the gig. It was a really fucked up system, to be honest. It's a really bad system. So when this site first started happening, my buddy Nick Cobb, I don't know if you know Nick Cobb, really great comic who lives in LA now. And he's been my buddy for a while, but he was the first one to bring me on road stuff because he was a part of this website. Like he had an account. So he would get these gigs like all over the place. And he would take me with him to open for him. And one time we went and, before I mention the story, so that people stopped using that site. Do you know why people stopped using that site?
No.
Because there was a couple of New York comics, well, at least in the New York area, there was a couple of comics that literally were farming out the gigs and would lowball it to a level of money that nobody could live off of. So they'd be like, hey, I'll do it for $50. And these people were like, all right. And they were just like keeping 25 and giving 25 to some like random open micer to do the gig. It was like a bad system.
It's horrible. It was set up to, I mean, I got a couple off of them, and it really was like I will do this. I should have said I would do the show for $300,000 because the shows were so bad where you're like, I can't believe that I lowered my price to do this. It like really made it so the comics felt like they like had to make themselves less than to do the shows, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was like not the great. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
It was not good gigs to begin with. Like
Right.
Not good gigs that you'd be getting paid a lot for. Like you said, like it's like even if you were getting paid like a bunch of money, still not good gigs. Like that kind of stuff. It was like I did one that was one that turned out pretty well was this. It was still weird though. It was a bachelor party, and not a bachelor party. One was a joint bachelor and bachelorette party, and I did a half hour of crowd work, but that actually worked out okay. Then another one was a 50th birthday party in Jersey, where everybody, we didn't know what was going on. Everybody showed up dressed like the guy whose birthday party it was. He always wore like a gray sweater and jeans. So we thought it was like a cult. We didn't realize what was going on. So then, and they had us roast him. We don't even know the guy. And they had us roast him for the gig. But the people there were actually really cool. And they were on the show. So it actually turned out better. But on paper, it was a terrible gig. Yeah. But one of the worst ones we had was at a Porsche club in what's the one? Annapolis, Maryland. Okay. Now, when I say Porsche club, I don't mean a club full of rich people who have Porsches. I mean a club full of some rich people and some people who saved up their whole lives to buy a Porsche, or they were renting a Porsche for the weekend. They were driving it around, and they drive around all day in their Porsches, and they hang out, and then they go have a dinner, like a banquet style dinner at some like kind of smallish, but like not too small type of venue in Annapolis, Maryland. And we were the entertainment. And my buddy Nick talked to the guy before, and he goes, listen, my sound system is broken, so just make sure that you have a sound system for me. And we show up, and Nick goes, where's the sound system? And he goes, you told me you had one. And he goes, I told you to get one because mine's broken. I would have not told you to do that because we can't have the show otherwise. So the guy's like, no, you didn't tell me that. So already it was off to a bad start. The guy was like, no, you didn't tell me that. You didn't tell me that at all. And he's like, yes, I did. He absolutely did. So then what happens, the guy goes, well, we got to do the show. And then he's like, all right. He's like, you're not getting paid if you don't do the show. So I'm opening for – so I have to go up cold. Now, I don't know if people who listen to the podcast know, one of the worst setups ever for stand-up comedy is banquet, like wedding-style tables because of the same reason that my last story was shitty. Some people's backs are to you, and they don't turn around. So it's like you're at a family party and you're trying to do a stand-up when you're 9 years old. It's just awful setup, right? Yeah. So that's what this room was like. It was a bunch of banquet tables. So I was like, there was two ways we could have done it. The room was big enough that if you did stand-up and shouted in the front of the room, there was a big portion of the room that probably wouldn't hear you. So I was like nervous as fuck about doing this. I was probably like 4 or 5 years into comedy. I didn't do a lot of road stuff. I thought of it as this big deal to me. I didn't want to disappoint Nick.
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna walk around and tell people my jokes. So I literally in this room had to walk around and do crowd work table to table, like I was fucking magician or something, table to table, and just tell people my jokes as I'm going while making fun of them, like at their table, sitting at it was like the worst. It was the worst scenario ever for stand-up comedy. And then Nick went up and he did well for what it was, but like it was impossible. A lot of them, they couldn't hear him. So because there was no fucking speaker. So I had the easy part. I did like 20 minutes, maybe a half hour, probably 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he had to do an hour in front of these people in the front of the room with a lot of them just not even realizing he was even up there. It was brutal.
That is insane. And it's so funny. Like I was just talking about this with another comic. These shows like that are set up privately and for corporate gigs or whatever it is, we really don't ask for a lot. You know, it's like a sound system,
yes,
some form of lighting, and we don't even need a stage. Like if you could just cordon off a place that we're gonna call the stage, that's fine. And even that, like people don't get it. They don't realize that you need those things.
They don't get it at all, and they purposely, like, it's almost at some gigs you almost think they're just trying to mess with you. You're like, did you purposely? Are you putting these obstacles in front of me just so you can see what if I can get over it? Like, you know, it's like that kind of thing. Because we don't. You're right. We don't need. You know, there's a lot of gigs like, you know, the money has to be right. Like, there's a lot of the code, like not code, but if you hear a gig that's at a firehouse or a gig that's at like a banquet hall or something like that, normally that's where they don't get it, and they think that you can just get up and start talking like it's a speech, and then they don't understand. The other thing is, especially in tri-state area, they don't understand when you come and you go, no, I need a proper area to do this, and a proper microphone and a proper sound setup, and everybody be quiet and no hecklers, and fucking let me be the show. Because in a lot of these, when people are really dopey and they don't get stand up, they think they're part of it. Like they think like, that's the kind of places you'll go. It happens everywhere, but you'll go, and then you'll have some shitty drunk fucking guy in the thing, and he'll show up afterwards and go, I helped you with the show. And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, man, and as far as hell gigs, like I got to the point where I still have no confidence as a human being, but as a comedian, I have enough confidence off stage that I know what I'm doing, that especially if I do well and you approach me and you say shit to me, I'll fight you. Like, I'll fucking fight you. Like, I'm at that point with it where I'm like, I've been doing this too long. We put up with too much shit. I'm like, with it, like, I'm like, it's also a thing where it's like, you won't do this. That's what I want. One day, if I get approached in the right way, I'm going to tell somebody, you're being shitty to me right now because you won't do this. You don't have the balls to do this. Right. But that's really what it comes down to, because that happened once at, I did a show. It was a club in Pennsylvania, and you probably know the club, but I won't say it because one of their clubs is fantastic. But I did one that was not ideal, and I think you might know what I'm talking about. But they're really, the people who run the other one are real, like the family who runs it, they're the best. That's why I don't want to mention it.
Yeah.
And it was like at a banquet hall. Like, it wasn't a brick and mortar club. It was at one of these banquet halls. And the audience, I actually did well. It was me and Mike Gaffney, who's a really great comic. And we both went up, and I did well for the room. Like, it definitely was a thing. And I had a guy was probably, I don't know, 60s, 70s years, whatever he was. And he was in a leather jacket. And he came up to me afterwards, and he comes up to Mike and he goes, you were pretty good. And to me, he goes, you weren't. And I lost my shit. And I go, fuck off. I go, leave. I go, fuck off. Take off. Go. Walk. Go. Walk. Go. 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 Like that. And the guy could not believe I said that to him. And he kept looking back. And I go, come back. I'll fight you. Come back. I will punch you in your head. Come back. Because my theory is this. Why can you do that to me and I can't make you feel uncomfortable back?
Right.
Why are they allowed to say whatever they want after a show when the fact of the matter is, you will not do this. You don't have enough bravery to do that. That's why they do it. And that's why people heckle. That's why people give shit, because they want to take the power back at the end of it. They want to take the situation, especially like, you ever do a show at a club and a guy shows up with a girl and the girl's really into the show and the guy comes up afterwards and tries to tip you. You ever take a tip for comedy?
I've taken a tip from corporate gigs, but never like after like.
I've had guys try to tip me. I had a guy try to tip me $100 after a club show, and I said no, I will not do it.
Yeah.
Because that gives back the power to you in front of your girlfriend because she liked me better than you for an hour.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
just live with it, man. You're not funny. Just live with it.
Dude, that is such a good point. That thing you said about why can't we make you feel uncomfortable is so true, because we as comics, I feel like we're so used to being like, please everybody. We have to please everybody.
Yes.
We have to entertain. And we stay in that zone after to where we really do let people shit on us. Like,
yes.
Whether it's managers, bookers, staff, audience members, we just like, well, hey, I don't want to cause any problems because I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
But why? Why do we do that to ourselves?
Well, I'll tell you, most of the industry is no. It's no, 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 no. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. Until you're good enough to get the things you're getting, and probably being fucked over to that regard. So that's why I made the decision where I'm like, the one place that I have the most control is how I did on the show. Now, if I bomb on a show, I'm out of the room. I'm gone. You're not gonna get me. I'm not gonna yell at you after I didn't do well. But if I did my job, the only time I have power is in the showroom after the show. I just did something that you won't do, so you're not gonna take me down a peg and make me feel like shit. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm probably not getting paid enough for this. I probably lost an audition 2 weeks prior. There's so much stuff, and when they say it's a hard business, it's hard to deal with the rejection. It's not hard work. We work for an hour a night. Right. It's not like it's not construction. You're not sitting there. You're not a firefighter. You're not going into blazes. But what you are, you're dealing with human nature and just these, like, for lack of a better phrase, I hate that this is my first time using this, but microaggressions. I don't like the phrase microaggressions. I think it's very, it's very trendy, but that's, you could use that for stand-ups. There's tons of microaggressions in stand-up of just people treating people shitty under the coating of that it's not, that just being normal,
That is such a good point, dude. So wait, if you bomb, you're out of there. You're not sticking around.
Yeah, for the most part, unless I've owned it. And if I'm on a weekend somewhere and it's the Thursday night show and 30 people showed up, because here's the thing, man, we don't really, when you get to a certain point, you're not, what I'm saying, because you're a while in, like, you're not bombing. A bomb is like nothing. Like, a bomb is you're getting nothing.
Right.
So if I have it where it's a mediocre set and I have to stay in the room for some reason, I won't mind that. But if I have it where it's a set that I should have killed on and I get like nothing from it, which happens every so often, I'm gone. I'm out of the room. And I think that's the most respectful thing to do, because you're avoiding the awkwardness of the people having to be like, good job.
Yeah, right.
When it wasn't a good job. You want to be as self-aware as possible. So that's why I'm like, hey, I don't even want to be around anybody right now, or at least I leave the room for a while, then I might come back. Especially but I'm at the point now where with stand-up where you deal with it better. The time that you go away becomes less and less, because you're like, as long as you're like, oh, I ate it, oh, that was bad. But if it's like a big time, like if I ever had I've had auditions for stuff in the city that like either like festivals or showcase shows or like stuff that kind of mattered. I had an audition for New York's Finest or whatever it was called, for New York Comedy Festival a long time ago, where I full on bombed, and I was out of there the minute I was done. The minute I was done, I went up to my manager and was like, okay, I'll see you, and I bolted out of there.
Yeah.
But it has to really be a bad, like, where it's where it means a lot, where it's like a crucial set, and a bad bomb, I think. You know what I mean?
Now, that New York's Finest bomb, where there's so much riding on it, how long did it take you to sort of be able to get past that? Because as we really do everything, every gig is the biggest gig to us, I feel like, in the moment. It's like,
yes, yeah.
And especially when there's so much pressure on it. And then do you think, like, are you telling yourself, like, I'm done, like, this is over? Or were you like, all right, well, that just wasn't, I didn't get him there, and I'm going to be all right?
Okay, so that gig in particular actually made me learn a lesson down the road. I think if you asked me right afterwards, after that happened, I don't think I would have been like, I'm quitting. It wasn't I'll tell you the story in a bit about where I almost quit, but I didn't. But with that story, what happened was I was just really embarrassed, and I went home, and I didn't want to be around my comic friends or anything like that, and I just ran out. I probably went to the bar. Who knows what I did? But if you would have asked me my outlook on it afterwards, I would be like, oh, I'm never going to get another chance again. That would have been my thing. But I wouldn't have said I was going to quit. I do think I still would have had the mindset I'm going to keep doing this. But it would have been like, I'm never going to have an opportunity like that again. That's probably what I thought immediately afterwards. Okay? But up until my next audition, what I didn't realize, it made me realize I have to be – what you have to realize is owning what you do on stage. So one of the things I was worried about before that New York's Finest audition, or whatever they call it, it's like one of those things, was that. So I'll do crowd work. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay, because my message is popping up. Crowd work is kind of I have a love-hate relationship with it because I'm very good at it, and I also think that it I have my opinions about when to do it, and I have my opinions about what my value is by doing it, what people think of me doing it. Like I think that they don't think of me let you think of as less than if you do a lot of crowd work, and I've always had that little thing in my head always. So especially when that set came up, and the advice that I was getting is like, and not just everybody's advice was like, hey, when you have these auditions, you don't do any crowd work. You do your set and that you're prepared and you get out of there. And that was in my head so much, I just rambled through my set and I got off of there. But what it made me realize later in my career is that's bullshit. I have to be who I am, because later on, cut to a couple of years later, I had an audition for that Adam Devine show that was on Comedy Central. And I told myself, I'm just going to be who I am. And my friend was hosting the show. So I went up and it was Mike Lawrence. I made fun of Mike Lawrence. Then I did my set that I wanted to do. I got a laugh for making fun of Mike Lawrence. That greased the wheels. That wasn't even crowd work. It was just riffing. And I did my set, and I did great, and I did the show. Now, that made me feel so much better. It made me realize, it's all the advice is not the same for everybody. You have to be
Right.
who you are with it. Do I still have my opinions about crowd work? Yeah, I do. I have my opinion about my act and what I should be doing better, and am I not self-hating, but am I self-analyzing that way? Sure. But crowd work is a strength and a weakness for me at the same time, put it that way. So that was the reason I'm bringing it up is because that was in my head the whole time at that New York's Finest thing. And then the more you settle in your career, the more you realize I gotta do what works and what I have fun with and what's me. And then as long as I'm not getting to the point of like hackiness, like the no return hackiness, where you're like, right. We know what that is. It's like an unspoken thing of like where you're not. It's disingenuous hackiness, or it's
right.
pre-written crowd work, which is always
right. Yeah, you're doing
thing.
like stock lines,
Yeah,
it's right. That's such a good point of like, you have to do what makes you the best comic, what makes you the best. It's so different. Because when I moved to New York, I wasn't used to the short sets and how tight everybody was. And it was a good thing to learn. But I remember sitting with another comic and we were writing, and they were like, you got to cut this line, cut this line. And I went to a club the next weekend and did it, and it like didn't work. And you start to realize like, you know what? That's just not how I'm best, like I operate better with a little bit more looseness,
Yes.
and it works for me. And I can't do somebody else's version of what works,
Right. Absolutely, man. Like if I had my way, I'd be John Mulaney. I'm not John Mulaney. You know what I'm saying? Like if I had that's the John Mulaney to me is the best. John Mulaney as far as talent goes, and as far as like a point of view, and as far as joke writing, and just stellar, because I think he's a personal like a personal Seinfeld. So like but not even saying he's Seinfeld, like it's like Seinfeld 2.0, where it's like bringing Seinfeld into this generation, into this era. So it's a thing of like these perfectly crafted jokes that get to let us know about you, and are really, really very, very unique and very original and very you. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is. So it's not just you're a joke machine. We all know guys that are joke machines, and that's what works for them. You know what I'm saying? That's what absolutely works for them. But guys like Mulaney, I'm like, you've embodied the both parts of it. That's why I think that works out the best for me. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I'm not. That's not me. What I am personal. But I'm a guy who I'll fuck with people in the crowd. Then I'll do a joke, and then I'll riff something. Then I'll fuck with somebody else in the crowd. Then I'll do a joke. Like I'm all over them. It's very all over the map. So
yeah,
realizing that is a long process.
Yeah. Do you? I don't know. I don't want to get too off track here, but now you got me thinking. Like, are you familiar with Jimmy Schubert?
Of course, he's fantastic.
Fantastic. And when you look at him, like I worked with him a few times at clubs and stuff, and he's like a machine gun. Like he does take a breath. And you're like,
but it's done in a way. It's done in a good way. It's done in a way that's like, that's him. You're like, that's him. Yeah.
That's him, you know? And you think about it, you're like, wow, like you couldn't put that on the Tonight Show because it's not the ba-da-ba-da-ba rhythm that they're looking for.
Right.
But that guy kills harder than almost anybody you'd see on those kind of shows.
And you know what? We're at the point now where you could put that in the Tonight Show. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they are. I did Letterman, and I did not think I would get Letterman because of how I am. I was convinced. I'm like, I'm not the type of comic that would have on Letterman, and they did it.
That's awesome.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying, as a point to what you're saying, like, that it's changing enough where – and the thing is, the jokes are good enough because, you know – there's a lot of people who come to those shows anyway are tourists and older people or whatever, you know, whatever it is. So if Jimmy Schubert kills on the road, those are road people. They would destroy a late night set.
Yeah.
And if he must have done a late night, maybe, Jimmy Schubert, right?
No. I was just talking to him a couple weeks ago, and you know, he's had some acting roles, he's had some guest roles on sitcoms, but he's never done like a Tonight Show. He's never done a Colbert or Letterman.
I'm shocked.
And it's crazy because he is like so engraved at the Comedy Store, you know, like coming up with Kinnison, but he's just always just been sort of like that, you know, like just he's the jack of all trades, but he can kill anywhere, but they never put it on television.
I think he would do great on a late night show. And also, it's kind of like we've kind of run out at the point where late nights don't matter as much as they have, and it used to be a much bigger deal. I think now it's more of a skill than it is anything else. Like that, getting that 5 minutes, that's more of the achievement amongst comics than it's gonna make you like it's gonna help your career. Like doing a late night is great, and it's a good thing to put out there, and it's like a good milestone. But what really it is like, wow, this is an amazing – like the last Norm set on Letterman is one of my favorite things in the world. Because it's just these amazing jokes, and it's super heartfelt, and it's perfect. Or there's a guy, Jeff – what's his name? Who did Letterman a bunch of times, and he has one of my favorite – what the hell is his name? It's escaping me right now. But I know him a little bit from New York, and he's fantastic. He's an amazing comic, but he's built for that type of comedy. He's kind of guy that he probably does tons of corporates, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You know?
There was I can't remember if his name's Jeff or not. I was just watching a clip of a guy. He did a suicide prevention hotline joke on Letterman that was so funny. Like kind of almost like Southern drawl, but glasses. Like I don't know if that was.
Oh, yeah. It might have been him. That might have been him. I can't remember. Maybe that's not from the set that I remember, but.
Great joke about like calling the automated information and being like suicide prevention hotline. It's like getting you to Susan Helpline, you know? And
yeah.
Hi, Susan. You don't know me, but I'm having some trouble. And it's brilliant, you know? It's like,
yeah, right.
You know, it's so good. What before we wrap up, what is the gig that you felt like, all right, I'm done?
Oh, it was early on. Okay, so I used to another hell gig that does not involve telling jokes is barking, and I don't know if you've done that in your past at all, but barking is when you hand out flyers for shows, and that is a gig in itself because it's like nobody wants anything to do with you. They think you're trying to sell them something, and you're not. You're just trying to get them. Well, you are. I guess you're trying to get them to a show, but you're not doing it for making money. You don't make any freaking money off it. So This guy, Collin Kane. I don't know if you know who Collin Kane is.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah. And and Collin Kane used to have a show at the Village Lantern in the West Village, and it was actually I will say this: whenever I think about Collin Kane, and I haven't actually, it could be a lovely guy at this point. I haven't seen him in years. I don't know, but he had a show there, and it was actually a good setup for barkers because I was probably 6 months into comedy at the time, and I would bark for his show. So you would bark for an hour, and then the show would start. He'd have like 3 or 4 comics go up and him do like 7 minutes maybe. He would do a half hour, and then you would go after him, the barkers. So it was smart on his part because then he doesn't have you stinking it up before him, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But also it was good because some people realize like, oh, Collin's the last comic because he's the longest. But a lot of people would stick around. So for 6 months in, on a weekly basis, I was doing like 5 minutes in front of like 30 people, which is huge for New York. Like that's like doing the Apollo, that's like doing freaking Carnegie Hall. You know what I'm saying? So I used to bark for that show, and then we would do 5 minutes. And I forget at what point when I worked. I probably did it for a few months, and then something happened, which is a different story that I won't get into, where I left. But basically, I was doing 2 different weeks in a row. I bombed so badly that one of the weeks it was going so. This is like in a basement, a dank basement in the West Village. It was so quiet that I heard a guy say to his friend, "This guy stinks. This guy stinks." It was so bad. Oh. And now, mind you, this guy was not heckling me. He wasn't heckling me. He wasn't trying to be a shithead. He wasn't trying to be loud. It just nobody was laughing. And it was such a tiny room that the whole audience heard him say, "This guy is terrible." I think he said that. "This guy is terrible." And to make matters worse, I go to the back. It didn't go well. And the other barker comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, great job, man." I go, "What are you talking about? I bombed." And he goes, "Yeah, but that's what comedy's about. It's about bombing." I go, "What are you, nuts?" "No, it's not. It's not." I know what you mean by that, but you're wrong. Very wrong. So I basically, I couldn't leave. I didn't leave because you were in the back. I guess I could have left, but I didn't for some reason. And I was just sulking for an hour in the corner. And that's the two back-to-back sets I did so poorly that I'm like, how did I not leave? How did I not leave comedy at that point? I don't know why I didn't. I have no idea why I didn't.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy what keeps us in it,
It's yeah, I think I was like a routine guy and I was already used to doing it. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep going. And I'm hanging out and all my friends were doing it. Not all my friends, but I was making friends. Maybe it was the social part of it maybe at that point. And then you get better and better, I guess,
Yeah, that's wild.
Isn't that funny?
Cliche question to end on,
Yeah.
But what do you think from everything, all the gigs, bad and good? What do you take away from it that helps you navigate it better now, those bad gigs, those nights where it's a little off? What's the one thing that you take away? You're like, because of this, I can navigate this better?
Well, all right, I have an answer for that question, and then I also have something that I realized that I want to say that might help comics that are listening to this show.
Yeah.
Because, all right, so one of the things I realized from all those gigs is that it's the idea of making you callous. So it makes you callous, and it makes you really appreciate the regular and good audiences, or the regular times that you do well. And it's also it helps bring you down a notch to really self-analyze and go, hey, maybe I'm not, because if you have especially with the way the human ego is, if you have a couple of good sets in a row as a beginner comic, you're like, I got this fucking figured out. I am good to go. Yeah. And what a bad bombing does to you is makes you go, I'm human. I have a long way to go. It's supposed to make you do that. It doesn't do that for everybody. It's supposed to make you go, oh, this is a longer road than I thought. I don't know what I'm doing entirely, but at least, and it helps you get better, basically. That's what I'm trying to say is It helps you, like, it can put a little notch, not notch in your belt, but like a little mark on the map of your career that helped you. Because they happen, that's the thing about comedy shows. And that kind of fits into the other thing I wanted to say is this. It took me a very long time to realize, and it helped me on stage have more fun once I realized that most people that come to these shows are there to have a good time. They're on your side. Mm-hmm. They want you to do well. They want to laugh. And that's why that's why really, really bombing is so infrequent, because most people will give you a laugh on some stuff. If you say a little quick line here and, that kind of thing, like you can have some audiences that are clam up, whatever it is, but coming up in New York, I always thought of it as it's me versus you, and I'm gonna win you over, and I win, and it's a battle. And when I would help me during like my 5 to 7 year hump, where I was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Made me realize like, "Oh no, we're all trying to have a good time on stage here." You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's one of the lessons of them being okay with the silence, which I still haven't. Being okay with silence is another thing to try to learn during it, where it's like the silence of setting up jokes and the silence of sitting in the silence as much as you can. That's what bombs help you do too, because if it's silent, at least you know you didn't run off. You can rest assured that you didn't start crying, you didn't start throwing up. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of people would have freaked out and torn their clothes off and jumped out a window. You know what I'm saying? Like you even just being up there is part of it. Like that's part of the learning of it is the idea of you're just standing in front of a group of people, because for a lot of people that's death. That's worse than death. You know?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a great way to put it. A great way to wrap up. Sean, I can't thank you enough for doing this. And
thanks for having me, man.
Of course. Please tell people where they can find you. And you've got a new pod. Plug that.
I do. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. It's at SeanyTime. That's at SeanyTime. And I have a radio show on Sirius every Wednesday at 4 called Celebrate. I have a movie podcast called Defend Your Movie. And my new podcast, because we all have so much time on our hands because there's no live stand-up going on, I have it's a UFO podcast. And if you're in the world of UFOs, you know they're not called UFOs anymore. They're called UAPs. And it's called Skylight. And each week, I'm either going to have somebody involved in that world, interview them, or what I'm going to do is it's going to be a personal story from somebody who's seen something they can't explain. The first episode is my cousin Timmy. He has 2 really great stories, so make sure you check it out. It's on Stitcher, Google Play, and Apple Podcast right now.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again for doing this, and it was a blast. We did it.